Coming up today on the Nick Craig Show, two Democrats out of Mecklenburg County, members of the North Carolina General Assembly, have switched their party affiliation. I'll have all the details coming up. And a good Tuesday morning to you. Welcome into the Nick Craig Show, streaming live this morning on YouTube, Rumble, X, and Facebook. Don't forget that you can take the show 24/7 on demand on your own time in your favorite podcast app. You can also listen online by visiting the website nickcraig.com. Our show this morning brought to you by the Law Group here in Wilmington. You can visit them online, lawgroupnc.com. or give them a call, 910-251-6088. We'll hear more from them coming up a little bit later on in the program this morning. We've got some major news that we are keeping an eye on out of the North Carolina General Assembly, as in the span of just 3 days, two Democrats in Mecklenburg County, members of the North Carolina General Assembly, have both announced that they are officially and have officially changed their party affiliation from Democrat to unaffiliated. If this sounds vaguely familiar to you, well, maybe you've seen the news over the last couple of days, but even before that, this is not the first time that a Democrat in Mecklenburg County has changed their party affiliation. I take you back to April of 2023. That is when, at the time, Democrat Representative Tricia Cotham, also from Mecklenburg County, made the switch. She was a registered Democrat, won the Democrat election, was a serving Democrat in Raleigh, and in April of 2023, early April of 2023, she, after receiving incredible amounts of harassment and vitriol and hatred from her own party, said, "I'm not doing this anymore. These people are crazy. These people have lost their minds," and she jumped ship. She switched from Democrat to Republican. She has gone on to win re-election since that election. She won re-election in 2024. We'll see what happens coming up here in 2026. Tricia Cotham was had voted in Democrat primaries going back to 2005. She was elected as a Democrat in 2022 and switched because she claimed that the Democrat Party is not the party it once was. This is from Cotham back in 2023. Quote, "As long as I have been a Democrat, the Democrats have tried to be a Big Tent. But where the modern Democrat Party is now has become unrecognizable to me and to so many others in the state and country." With Cotham saying that the Democrat Party here in North Carolina, quote, "wants to villainize anyone who has free thought, free judgment, or has solutions, or who wants to get to work to better our state." Continuing by saying, "If you don't do exactly what the Democrats want you to do, they will try and bully you. They will try and cast you aside. I saw that when I first ran for office and was told, 'Why didn't you ask for permission?'" She recounted, "I didn't think I needed to do that, and quite frankly, I was offended," with Cotham saying that as a female, their approach to her, the Democrat Party, disturbed her. This is 2023. This is under the reign of King Cooper here in North Carolina, who had a stranglehold on the North Carolina Democrat Party. And what Representative Cotham was saying at the time as a Democrat is 100% accurate. If you are a Democrat in North Carolina's General Assembly and you feel that legislation that has been passed by Republicans is good legislation, if you believe that something is being done in Raleigh that you agree with, that is, again, being pushed by the majority, who have the Republicans having had the majority now going all the way back to 2010, being sworn in 2011. If you believe that the other side has a good idea and you're willing to vote with the other side on that good idea, you are cast aside. And we saw that with the two Democrats in Mecklenburg County that have switched their party affiliation over the last couple of days. Let's start off with Representative Carla Cunningham. We have heard from her many a times here on this show. While she's not joined us as a guest, we've played plenty of her clips from the North Carolina General Assembly, as she has become, for a large part prior to her switching her affiliation, seemingly was the voice of reason for Democrats within Raleigh. She was very consistently one of the only Democrats that would stand up, whether it was on the House floor, whether it was during a committee meeting, one of the very few House Democrats in Raleigh that would stand up and rationalize what many believe as common sense, straightforward legislation being passed by Republicans and say, why are you guys talking about her colleagues in the Democrat Party? Why are you guys against this? And it was those actions, and specifically one veto override vote, that caused the entire Democrat Party here in North Carolina to turn against her. And for that reason, she lost a Democrat primary in March of this year. She earned just 21.7% of the vote in the Democrat primary in March, with Rodney Sadler securing nearly 70%. So as an elected official, who, by the way, has served in the North Carolina General Assembly since 2012, serving 7 straight terms, she received less than 22% of the vote in the Democrat primary. That is how hard the Democrats went against her. That is how crazy her opposition was in terms of how badly they wanted to get her out of office. Why? Not for abandoning her post, not for not showing up to work. She was always there, always on hand for votes, not for being a criminal, not doing her job again, none of those things, all for the fact that she sided with Republicans on one piece of legislation. That legislation required sheriffs across the state of North Carolina, all 100 elected sheriffs in all 100 counties. That piece of legislation required sheriffs to cooperate with immigration and customs enforcement. That is not radical legislation. That is not crazy right-wing legislation. The law, as written by lawmakers in Raleigh, the law written out of the North Carolina General Assembly, surprise, surprise, vetoed by Democrat Governor Josh Stein, made it very clear that if you are arresting somebody as a sheriff in any county across the state of North Carolina, and ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, places a detainer over that individual's head, then you need to wait the pre-described time for ICE to determine what they want to do with that individual. That's the legislation. It did not require sheriff's offices to act as immigration agents. Nope, not that at all. It was simply, hey, if the federal government says, hey, you just arrested this guy, there's questions about his immigration status, we're going to put a 48-hour hold on him. Please don't release him. And in that 48 hours, we're going to do some investigations, and we may come and pick him up and charge him with federal charges if that person happens to be illegally in the United States. That was the legislation. That is the bridge that was too far for the Democrat Party here in North Carolina. And for Representative Cunningham, she was the only Democrat that joined Republicans in voting on that legislation. House Bill 318. It was taken up back on July the 29th of last year. And you can see from the General Assembly's online system that keeps track of all the votes and everything like that, you had one singular Democrat vote on this veto override. And that single Democrat, Carla Cunningham, out of Mecklenburg County, on what I think most people would describe as common sense legislation. If you are a law enforcement agency in Mecklenburg County, Wake County, Buncombe, New Hanover, doesn't matter what county you're in, and you arrest somebody and there are questions about said person's immigration status, that you should in fact work with federal authorities to make sure that that individual deals with the consequences if they're illegally in the United States. That was the legislation. And for that vote, for deciding that, yeah, this is common sense, yeah, I can understand why this would be relevant. And of course, in her situation with her sheriff in Gary McFadden, Mr. I don't know the various branches of government. I have no idea what goes on in my job. I can't answer any questions. She believed this was important legislation. And for that, to make sure that dangerous, violent criminals are pulled off the streets of Charlotte, of Mecklenburg County, for that, she was primaried by the Democrat Party and cast aside. That is the modern state of the Democrat Party here in the state of North Carolina. That's it. Just one vote on one piece of legislation that, again, and I'm sure if you're a radical left-wing progressive, you find this legislation to be incredibly radical, but it's just not. I mean, if you look at any political polling, either done here in the state of North Carolina or across the rest of the country, you will find that the vast majority of people in political polling want immigration law enforced. The number is 60, 70% in some polls. Now, of course, there are differences in how said legislation or how immigration is enforced, how it's handled, and so on and so forth. But the overarching question of, do you want immigration law to be enforced? Do you want individuals to be held accountable for breaking said immigration law and coming into the United States? The vast majority of the American public says very clearly, yes, we want that enforced. And yes, if individuals are in the country illegally, we want them to face consequences, which in most cases is deportation from the United States. And for Representative Cunningham's vote on that issue, House Bill 318, she was cast aside by the Democrat Party. We are talking about two Democrats out of Mecklenburg County who over the last couple of days have both changed their party affiliation from Democrat to unaffiliated. First one we're talking about here, Representative Carla Cunningham. Josh Stein getting involved in her primary in March of this year, endorsing the individual who ended up winning that primary in Democrat Rodney Sadler. The governor endorsed him. The Democrat Party completely cut off Carla Cunningham at the knees, did not give her the ability to use any party resources in the March 2026 primary. And as a result, she received less than 22% of the vote. And with that, well, she has decided that she is in fact leaving the Democrat Party. Writing in a statement on Friday, Representative Cunningham says, in part, "I have been a Democrat all my life, but I came to realize that I want to serve the people, not a party. Being an independent thinker does not align with party politics, and I will never compromise the needs of my constituents to satisfy a political agenda." And I have heard many interviews with Representative Cunningham over the last year or so, 2 years maybe, and she has made this point consistently, that when in interviews, when she's speaking on the floor of the House or in various committees across Raleigh, she makes the point abundantly clear that the things that she is doing, in this case, voting to make sure that sheriffs cooperate with federal authorities as it relates to immigration, she is doing this to make her community safer. She is doing this to get violent, dangerous, hardened criminals off the streets of, in her case, the city of Charlotte and portions of Mecklenburg County. That is what she's doing. And for that vote, to actually make sure that her constituents are better off, which is, by the way, who you are elected to serve, right? You're not elected to serve a party. You're elected to serve your voters. And in the case of the General Assembly, you vote, whether you're running in the North Carolina House or the North Carolina Senate, you have a geographical group of people that are, by definition, your constituents. These are your voters. These are the individuals that show up every 2 years and send you to Raleigh to do the business of the people of North Carolina. And for that, Representative Cunningham was completely cast aside by the Democrat Party. She was primaried in March of earlier this year. Josh Stein and other major Democrats swooped into the race and made sure that she couldn't win. So she has now officially switched her party affiliation from Democrat to unaffiliated. That happening on Friday. So flash forward to Monday, we find out that yet another Democrat from Mecklenburg County is making the exact same switch. Within the span of not even a full business day, we've got another representative. This time we're talking about Nassif Majid. He is a Democrat from House District 99, also in Mecklenburg County. Northern Mecklenburg County announced that he was switching party affiliations on Monday, with him saying in a statement, in part, "After deep reflection and conversation with constituents across District 99, I have made the decision to disaffiliate with the Democrat Party and serve as an independent. This decision is rooted in my responsibility to represent people, not party agendas, and to remain grounded in integrity, fairness, and truth." So you've got very similar comments here, not exactly the same, but very similar comments from Representatives Cunningham and Majid. Both of them echoing the same thing, that we're no longer going to be dog walked by the Democrat Party here in North Carolina, that we have a responsibility in our remaining term, which will be the legislative short session, which according to the House calendar runs through the beginning parts of July, so over the next couple of months, that we have an obligation to fight for and to represent the people that elected us. Both of them echoing very similar sentiments in their comments. Majid has served on the Charlotte City Council for 8 years, 91 to 1999, and became a member of the General Assembly in 2018. Similar situation to what we just talked about with Representative Cunningham. He lost his Democrat primary in March of this year by a vote of 68 to 26%. Why did that happen? Well, he, similar to Representative Cunningham, voted on legislation that the Democrats didn't like. He was the only Democrat in the North Carolina House to side with Republicans and vote on the veto override of House Bill 805. That piece of legislation's name was Preventing the Sexual Exploitation of Women and Minors. Pretty common sense legislation, something that I would hope that people across party lines could get behind. But of course, here in North Carolina, here with the radical Democrat Party run by Anderson Clayton here in North Carolina, a bridge too far. Let's be perfectly clear on what this legislation is. It affirms biological definitions of sex in state law, curbs the sexual exploitation of women and minors online, expands parental rights in education, and restricts the use of state funds for sex transition procedures. Those are all of the details in House Bill 805. Defines biological sex in state law. I don't think that's anything crazy, unless, of course, you're one of these. I believe that there's 7,000 genders, and one day you just wake up and you're magically changing your gender from boy to girl to the next thing you know, you're an Apache attack helicopter. I mean, unless you're one of those people, this is a normal, common sense piece of legislation. Making sure that parents have additional rights in the education system and not wasting taxpayer dollars for sex transition procedures. Hey, if you want to live your own life, have at it. I'm a conservative. I want you to live your own life. If you want to pay tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, I don't know what it costs to go through a sex transition, I have at it. Go wild. None of my business. But I can tell you, using state funds for it, absolutely inappropriate. Absolutely not appropriate in any way, shape, or form. I'm not paying for that. You want to pay for that on your own? You've got private insurance that's going to cover that. Again, have at it. That's your business. That's your deal. What you want to do is you. I don't have any thoughts on that. Don't really care what you do. But what I do care about is me paying for it, because that's exactly what was going on in North Carolina. So for that vote, you just heard I just walked through some of the details on House Bill 805. Representative Majid was similar to Cunningham, cast aside by the Democrat Party for voting with the Republicans on, again, what I will describe as relatively common sense legislation. And for that, pushed aside, primaried in March, and lost his primary, meaning he will not be able to run and will not be on the ballot, same as Cunningham, in November of this year. So, same exact thing going on. For one single vote in the North Carolina General Assembly on one singular veto override, these two Democrats, Cunningham serving since 2012, Representative Majid serving since 2018, but being a Charlotte City Councilman for 8 years throughout the 90s. So you're talking about 30 years of public service. For that, for one vote, dead to the Democrat Party. useless to the Democrat Party. We no longer want you. We are no longer going to talk to you. We are no longer going to include you in discussions taking place within the Democrat caucus. This is the kind of vitriol and hate and lack of tolerance that the Democrat Party has created, which of course is the most ironic thing in all of this, right? The Democrat Party, the party of tolerance. We're always hearing this from those on the left. You've got to be tolerant of everybody, tolerant of all of their beliefs, unless, of course, you're a Democrat who votes the wrong way. Then we're not going to be tolerant of any of that. Actually, it's going to be quite the opposite. We're literally going to kick you to the curb. We are going to make sure that you cannot get reelected, and we will make sure that somebody beats you in your primary. That is what the Democrat Party has created here in North Carolina. An attitude, an agenda that is completely, I would argue, beginning to destroy their party and eat it from within. When you've got common sense lawmakers on the political left, Democrats, that are voting their conscience on just one or two pieces of legislation, and for that, they are literally exiled from the party. That does not foster good governance. That does not foster, from my vantage point, good decision-making at all. But the radical progressives, including Anderson Clayton, the chair of the North Carolina Democrat Party, have completely taken the ship over. They are running rudderless, and this is how they are deciding that they're going to act. And so I'll have some more details on both of these members switching their party affiliations from Democrat to unaffiliated coming up here in just a couple of minutes. But before that, I want to tell you about the law group here in Wilmington and thank them for their continued support. When legal challenges arise, or maybe you have any legal questions, make sure you reach out to the law group right here in Wilmington. Going back to 2003, Melissa Gott and her experienced team of attorneys have provided high-quality, affordable legal services across Eastern North Carolina. No matter the legal issue or legal question that you're facing, reach out to the law group. I reached out to Melissa and her team. Hard to believe this. Almost 6 years ago, when I went through the process as a first-time home buyer, was very new to the process, having never done it before, reached out to Melissa. Her and her amazing team held my hand every step of the way, made sure that all my ducks were in a row. Everything was set to go so that I could close on my house. Phenomenal experience with the law group. Their dedicated team ensured that any questions, any concerns, any issues that I had were resolved as quickly as possible. I'll note all of this going down during the middle of COVID-19, a very odd time here in the United States as well. The law group was absolutely phenomenal. They're located in downtown Wilmington, and they're just a phone call away at 910-251-6088, or you can visit them online at lawgroupnc.com. That's 910-251-6088, or visit them online, lawgroupnc.com. It's the law group, experience and dedication you can rely on. We appreciate the law group and their continued support of the Nick Craig Show. Quick break. What does this mean for Democrats here in North Carolina with two of their members flipping to unaffiliated over the last few days? I'll have continued coverage on that as the Nick Craig Show continues streaming live this Tuesday morning, YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook, and available 24/7 wherever you get your podcasts. And a good Tuesday to you. Welcome back to the Nick Craig Show as we continue talking about some pretty big news, I'll say, out of the North Carolina General Assembly. Two Democrats over the span of just the last couple of days switching their party affiliations from Democrat to unaffiliated. The first to do it on Friday was Representative Carla Cunningham out of Mecklenburg County. She's been elected as a Democrat in the General Assembly going all the way back to 2012, serving 7 consecutive terms there. Voted against the Democrats and voted with Republicans on a single veto override last year that caused the Democrat Party to pull out the knives and go after her. And to their credit, they were successful in primarying her in March. She lost her primary, receiving less than 22% of the vote. She's now will remain in her job till the end of this session, but will not be on the ballot in November, will not have the ability to run for re-election, at least as of this election cycle. She obviously could do so in the future, but not in the 2026 midterm elections. And then we found out on Monday that another Democrat has done the exact same thing. Representative Majid out of Mecklenburg County as well, northern Mecklenburg County, House District 99, made the exact same switch, with both of them saying similar things, that they are no longer going to be essentially led around by the Democrat Party, that they want to be able to support, as they should, their constituents, regardless of what the Democrat Party thinks, which is both of what they were doing when they voted with Republicans on 2 veto overrides back in July of last year. We've got some reaction from this coming in from Republican leadership, including House Speaker Destin Hall, who took to social media to describe the situation, saying, quote, "Today's Democrat Party has made it clear there's no room for those who don't fall in line. I applaud my colleagues, Representative Cunningham and Representative Majid, for putting their constituents first. Like so many other North Carolinians, they have chosen to move forward from a party that has left them behind. North Carolina is a better place with leaders who refuse to be bullied into silence." And, that word there, bullied, could not be used any more accurately by Speaker Destin Hall, because that's exactly what this is. These two individuals were bullied into submission by the Democrat Party for voting their conscience, for voting their will. And of course, the irony in all of this, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Democrat Party that speaks of inclusion and free thought and all of this. You've got to believe what everybody says. And if somebody decides that if you don't approach them with the proper gender, that you're committing a hate crime against them, and whatever anybody says is just the way that the world works. They preach all of this garbage 24/7, 365. Then when they're put to the test, when their own members say, hey, I don't really feel right about this. I want sheriffs to work with federal immigration forces. I want sheriffs to deal with ICE detainers if they come in. Or, hey, I want to make sure that women are protected across the state of North Carolina, that I'm going to pass legislation. I'm going to vote with the Republicans to pass legislation that protects women and minors across our state. For that, they are literally thrown out of the party. That's the situation that Democrats have created here in North Carolina. Now, let me make sure I'm clear with this. I don't want to put the cart too far ahead of the horse. Just because these two individuals have switched their affiliation from Democrat to unaffiliated, it's not the same that Representative Cotham did where in 2023, where she switched from Democrat to Republican. I do not have any opinion or feeling that these individuals, Cunningham and Majid, are all of a sudden going to become hardline conservatives. Let's make sure we set our expectations very clear on this. I don't believe that is the case. Now, is there a higher likelihood that these individuals will vote with Republicans in the short session? I mean, I think there's a larger possibility of this. From a pure political standpoint, they literally have nothing to lose, right? They've already been beaten in their Democrat primaries back in March. So in terms of political blowback or political pressure, there's nothing there that's left. So this, for the Democrat Party, this might be longer term beneficial to them because they now will get 2 more radical progressive members in the North Carolina House as they pushed out Cunningham and Majid. So long term, this might, the Democrats obviously feel that this will be beneficial. In the short term, there is a very real possibility that this comes back and bites them in the rear end significantly, because there remain 6 veto overrides on the House calendar. Representative Cunningham and Majid both are in the North Carolina House. If just one of them decides that they're going to vote with Republicans on these issues, then those pieces of legislation that were already passed by the General Assembly, then vetoed by Democrat Governor Josh Stein, those pieces of legislation will be enacted. And there's some major legislation in there, 3 of them dealing with DEI in the K-12 system, in state government, and throughout the community college and UNC system. Major legislation there. Senate Bill 50, the one that I think most people have their eyes on, constitutional carry here in North Carolina. That legislation has been held up since last year because from up until this point, there's not been a Democrat that is willing to vote with Republicans. Now, again, I don't know, and I have no way to, at this point, tell you whether or not these 2 individuals will vote with Republicans. They have both said in their statements that they're voting their conscience. They're voting for their constituents. They're voting for their people, who in these cases in Mecklenburg County are predominantly Democrats. So the varying degree in which this will have an impact at this point remains very unknown. We don't know exactly how this is going to play out. Is there a higher likelihood now that these 2 individuals could vote with their colleagues on across the aisle on the Republican side? I'd say yes, of course. There's a reason that both of them have switched their party affiliation. There's a reason that both of them have decided that they are going to go through the process of changing their affiliation with the North Carolina, or in this case, their local county board of elections, and become unaffiliated. They are obviously not satisfied and not happy with the Democrat Party, and I can't really necessarily blame them for that after the harassment and the bullying that they have felt from their party over the span of the last year or so. Again, not trying to get too far ahead of this thing. Really not. I'm trying to, it's big news. It's a big information anytime that you've got a elected official changing their party affiliation. That's always a big story. It does remain, as I noted, it remains unseen right now exactly how these 2 individuals are going to vote. But zooming out on this a little bit further, I mentioned this a little while ago. I believe that the Democrat Party has created essentially a ticking time bomb here in North Carolina. They have set the standard very clearly for their members that if, God forbid, you have a different opinion, a different viewpoint, a different stance on an issue, we are going to come after you hard. We are going to primary you. We are going to send our radical ideological sycophants after you. And that's exactly what we have seen. And that is not something that is going to foster good legislation for the Democrats. That is not something that long-term will be beneficial for the Democrat Party here in North Carolina. It's just not. Obviously, if you're a Democrat, you want your members to vote along party lines. I completely understand that. From a Republican standpoint, I completely agree and I completely understand. There's a difference between wanting your members to vote a certain way and then having it happen or not happen. And then there's another thing when you've got these full court presses that go against these individuals and you essentially run them out of office. That, to me, does not foster good energy for the Democrat Party. And I have talked now for months about how the Democrat Party here in North Carolina is not on good footing. And I will continue to stand by that. We see example after example. They have a largely incompetent person running the Democrat Party here in North Carolina, in Anderson Clayton, who spends all of her time posting profanity on social media, F-bomb this, F-bomb that. That's who they've got leading their party. This is not going to be fruitful for the Democrats long term, who for 15 years have been out of power in Raleigh, in large part due to their own awful, garbage, terrible policies and an unwillingness to meet North Carolina voters where they are at. I mean, you want to look at the real reason why the Democrat Party has not been able to win a majority in the General Assembly going all the way back to 2010. It's because their ideas freaking suck. I mean, plain and simple. Their policies are terrible. The things that they stand up against are illogical, like making sure that local law enforcement cooperates with federal law enforcement as it relates to immigration. These are the same people that want to strip away the Opportunity Scholarship Program. They don't want you as a parent or a grandparent to have insight as to what is going on in your kid's classroom. They believe that it is totally appropriate, totally acceptable to have dudes, biological men, playing in female sports throughout middle and high school. This is what the Democrat Party stands for. And so it's no surprise with those incredibly stupid ass ideas that the Democrat Party remains down and out here in North Carolina. Now, this is a midterm election that could favor them pretty significantly. Midterms, when you've got Republicans in control, midterms, when you've got Democrats in control, are typically not beneficial for the party that is in charge. That is just typically how that process plays out. And so we'll see what happens come November. Is there a possibility that Democrats take majorities in the House? Possibly, likely. I'd say, I don't know. I don't know where I'd put the odds right now. It's late April, so hard to exactly handicap that, how far out. The idea that they'll take control in the Senate remains incredibly low. Could they pick up the House? Maybe. But in all likelihood, you'll still see a slim margin in terms of a Republican majority once election night rolls around here in November, and as we get on into what will be the 2027 legislative long session. So it's going to be very interesting to see how these two individuals operate over the next couple of months as lawmakers are back in Raleigh today. Once again, there are multiple veto overrides that are on the calendar for this morning. The House is set to convene at 10:30, and I don't know whether these votes are going to be taking place today, but these 6 veto overrides remain. We'll keep an eye on Representatives Cunningham and Majid, and as soon as we figure out exactly what's going on with them, we'll pass the details along right here on the Nick Craig Show. You would have heard about this first if you were following me over on social media. You can give me a follow over on X at Nicholas M. Craig, or follow the Nick Craig Show over on Facebook. All of those details over there as well. Plus, also that information available in our Morning Line email. If you are not subscribed to that, you can do so. It's real simple. Head on over to ncmorningline.com, ncmorningline.com. Subscribe there. You can join over 1,000 North Carolinians that are getting this email each and every weekday morning. Some big changes coming to the email coming up next week. I'll be providing additional details on that, but ncmorningline.com for the free Nick Craig Show Morning Line email. Again, we'll keep an eye out of everything out of the North Carolina General Assembly. All right, switching gears here pretty significantly. I caught an unbelievable clip on social media last night. It involved Lee Zeldin, who, of course, is the head of the EPA, that is the Environmental Protection Agency. Lee Zeldin previously running for governor in the state of New York against Democrat Kathy Hochul. To his credit, ran a phenomenal campaign, ran a really good race, came close, but it is very, very hard for a Republican to get elected statewide in New York. He is an incredible individual, previously serving in Congress. President Donald Trump tapped him to lead the Environmental Protection Agency, and I have said for months now, I've said it for over a year, that Lee Zeldin is my favorite cabinet official within the Trump administration. You might be saying, well, Nick, what about Hegseth? What about Rubio? It's not to say those guys aren't doing a great job. The EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, has taken over so much responsibility. They have caused your life, and you don't even know this, right? It's very indirect, but they have caused your life to be so much more expensive, so much more complicated with their out of control, overburdensome regulation to protect the so-called environment, right? Because everything is climate change this, climate change that. And with the EPA and with previous rulings and previous decisions from the Supreme Court and federal court systems, they have ballooned into an agency that is essentially, to me, almost another branch of government. They are so overburdensome with their regulation. Lee Zeldin, since he has been at the top of and the head of EPA, has been consistently cutting regulation, cutting red tape, getting the Environmental Protection Agency out of places where they don't need to be. Is there a benefit of having some EPA regulation across the United States? Sure. Absolutely. You can see in certain circumstances, in certain cases, absolutely. I'm not an abolish an EPA guy. But it should be a very small agency. It should be an agency that is only responsible for a couple of few things here across the nation, not literally everything, which is what the EPA has become. So during a committee hearing yesterday, there was an incredible back and forth between Lee Zeldin and everybody's favorite Congresswoman, Rosa DeRula. She is the individual in Congress who has I think the color changes. She's got either the blue or purple stripe in her hair. She's an elderly woman. She was going back and forth with Lee Zeldin during an Appropriations Committee hearing yesterday. If you have not seen or heard this clip, it is absolutely unbelievable. Take a listen to this. Lee Zeldin, the head of EPA, laying down the business in Washington, D.C.
When climate change is flooding our streets, poisoning our air, driving up healthcare and disaster costs, how can the EPA justify abandoning that duty to protect Americans to appease polluters under the false flag of economic growth?
Following the law, Section 202 of the Clean Air Act, where does it say anything about fighting global climate change? Loper Bright, Supreme Court case, you familiar with it?
No, I maybe others are. I'm not, but let me...
Now, hold on. I got to stop this right here. The fact that this member of Congress does not know about the Loper Bright Supreme Court case is astonishing. We talked about Loper Bright here on the Nick Craig Show last year. This was a major decision from the United States Supreme Court that said agencies like the EPA, which in large part the Loper Bright case was literally about the EPA, that agencies like the EPA are no longer allowed to essentially make legislation themselves. Previous to the Loper Bright decision, the reason why an entity like the EPA has gotten so big and so bloated is because they were allowed in rulemaking to pretty much do whatever they wanted without the authority of Congress. The Loper Bright decision from the United States Supreme Court last year said that these agencies can now be taken to task on their rulemaking and essentially be sued over them, which was not something that was possible. Yes, it could be done, but it was very complicated in the past. The Loper Bright decision was a major win for conservatives across the United States, a major decision, one of the larger decisions from the United States Supreme Court in recent years. It's major. And the fact that a member of Congress, it doesn't seemingly know what the Loper Bright case is astonishing.
But that's really important. As a member of Congress, Loper Bright says that we as an agency don't have the authority to get creative if Section 202 of the Clean Air Act
No, but you don't have, excuse me, you do not have the right to say climate change does not exist, that it's a hoax, and that's where this administration is coming from.
I understand you're upset that you don't know what Loper Bright is. Do you know what the major policies doctrine is?
I'm upset because...
You know what the major policies doctrine is?
You know what, let me just
You're a
say
member
this
of
to
Congress. You should know.
Well, you have moved from someone who defended the environment to all of a sudden...
Being very defensive about not knowing the two biggest landmark Supreme Court cases of the last year with regards to your question.
You are very defensive about changing your policy and your positions with regard to the environment.
Okay.
Now, you just tell
Do you want me to tell you what the two biggest Supreme
I
Court
want you to
cases
tell
are of the
me.
last few years?
This is what I want you
Michigan
to tell
versus
me.
EPA,
Whoa.
West Virginia versus EPA.
You know, you're here because you need money from us. So halt for the second and wait for the questions and answer the question.
Well, I answered your question,
No, you
and
didn't.
you didn't like my answer because
did
you
not
don't know what
answer the
Loper Bright is,
question.
because you don't know what the major policies doctrine is,
Chairman,
because
is
you're
this
asking
answer
me,
the question?
you're asking me about Section 202 of the Clean Air Act, and you don't read it. You don't know what it says.
Listen, and what you want to do is to deny,
No, I actually read the law. I do my homework.
Really?
You're just somebody who likes to have the microphone on. You know what I have to do? I read the law,
No,
I
Mr.
read the
Chairman,
Supreme
I don't
Court
have to listen
cases.
to this, and I would say
No,
that
what you should do for your
this-
constituents is actually read statute.
This budget is at real risk.
Read
Let
your
me tell
Supreme
you,
Court.
This is the Appropriations Committee.
Oh,
you come here.
you care
and
about
you
science?
tell
Now
us-
you're threatening to defund it?
Oh my God! No, you don't fund
Because
science.
you don't know what Loper
You
Bright
are
is.
climate
Because you don't know what the
deniers.
major policies
You are
doctrine is. Your
climate
message
deniers.
to our folks at the EPA is that you want to
I don't
defund
have
us.
to listen to this BS.
The BS. You think I made up these cases?
Yeah, I think you have made up a whole
I
lot of
made
BS.
up Loper Bright. I made up West Virginia versus EPA. I made up Michigan versus EPA.
Woe is right. What are you doing? Why are
Wait,
you helping
whoa.
polluters?
Bravo. A golf clap for Lee Zeldin, the head of EPA. Absolutely demolishing Representative Rosa DeLaRue out of Connecticut. Those are major cases. This is not some random law or some random decision from some appellate court that realistically you would not expect a member of Congress. Now, let me be perfectly clear with this. I'm not under the mindset that every member of Congress knows every single decision that is made throughout the United States. But Loper Bright was a unbelievably major decision by the United States Supreme Court. It fundamentally changes the way that agencies like the EPA operate. It says, in kind of boiling it down, and again, I'm not a lawyer, but boiling it down to what it really means is that agencies like EPA cannot make rules on things that Congress has not given them the authority to do. And that is part of the reason why, previous to the Loper Bright decision, agencies like the EPA were allowed to put their tentacles in everything, because previous rulings from high courts and from appellate courts have said that, yeah, well, when an agency says something, it's essentially, that's the way that it is. And there's not really anything that you can do about it. And part of the Loper Bright ruling from the United States Supreme Court was saying, actually, no, that's not the case. If Congress wants an agency to have authority over something, then Congress needs to pass legislation to give them said authority. But inherently, because the EPA is an agency, they do not have the right to just jump into anything and everything that they deem to be important for the so-called environment. And so the fact that a sitting member of Congress admits that she does not know what the Loper Bright decision is as she's trying to grill Lee Zeldin, the head of the EPA, is truly astonishing. This is, of course, another modern day realization of what the Democrat Party has become. She starts yelling and screaming about climate change, you're a denier of science, and that we're going to pull your funding. So nothing screams protecting the environment more than threatening to pull funding from the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. Bravo, hand clap and bow down there to EPA Secretary Lee Zeldin. Absolutely phenomenal exchange in Congress yesterday. Now, that clip is up on his social media channel. It's got, at this point, 4.1 million views, and it is doing very well as he is making members of Congress kind of show their true colors. In the case of the Congresswoman from Connecticut, she doesn't know what the hell she's talking about. She doesn't know what very important, very consequential decisions from the United States Supreme Court actually mean. Bravo, Lee Zeldin remains my favorite cabinet secretary within the second Trump administration. Well, as I mentioned, the North Carolina General Assembly back in Raleigh today. I'll be keeping an eye on all the details out of that, including there's going to be a vote on Medicaid funding today. That's likely to go through an additional $320 million for Medicaid. We'll get into that. Great comment coming in on our Rumble live chat. That Congresswoman looks like a villain on Scooby-Doo. Yeah, unfortunately, that is where we're at. Get old Casey Kasem out there to do some voiceovers, and we'll introduce our brand new Scooby-Doo villain character here on the Nick Craig Show. Thanks, Dylan. Great comment. Appreciate you watching the show here this morning. We'll keep an eye on the General Assembly and everything unfolding over here over the next couple of days. That's going to do it for a Tuesday edition of the Nick Craig Show. Thanks to the Law Group here in Wilmington for their continued support. Visit them online, lawgroupnc.com. The Nick Craig Show streams live weekday mornings, 7 a.m., YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook, available 24/7 in your favorite podcast app, and heard weeknights, 9 to 10 p.m. on WBT Radio in Charlotte. Enjoy your Tuesday. We'll do it again tomorrow morning right here on The Nick Craig Show.